regard to this new settlement for the weeks ahead. I was glad to be able to talk to you guys earlier today. I'm filming this the night before. I'm in the basement. We've done some rearranging over spring break. So the Cavs and Cavs wall and the Indians wall and the shrine to Cleveland sports has gotten a little bit bigger. So hopefully you will enjoy this for a minute or two in the background. Today, what we're going to be taking a look at is a couple notes, and I'm going to do this just for today. And what you'll be able to do is if you go to your Google Classroom, I'm going to have a tab or a topic called April 6th through the 10th. That's this week. This is the period 5 version. Period 6, you'll have the exact same thing. It just look a little bit different as far as when your first day of virtual class will be. Yours will be the 8th. But underneath this, you're going to have a lot of different things. And you're going to have access to a PowerPoint called Perfect Competition and Monopolies. And then you're going to have a review guide. And when you're watching this video or looking at this PowerPoint, I want you to be filling out this review guide. This whole unit or section we're going to talk about over the next week and a half is all about the different markets. And we are going to take a quiz next week. So as a way for you to get ready for that quiz, you'll be able to use this review guide on your quiz to help you with it. So as I'm talking about some of the slides, or if you're reading through the slides, you'll be able to find the answers to these different questions from here. And then, like I said, we'll take a quiz. It's sort of a Google quiz, and we'll figure that out from there. Okay, so what we're going to start with is we're going to talk about what's called perfect competition and monopolies. And this little chart that I've put together here, it's going to make more sense in a little bit. So there are 4 types of markets that we're going to be talking about over the next couple days. And there's monopolies, there's oligopolies, there's perfect competition, and there's monopolistic competition. And I wanted to start off today talking about 2 that are on opposite ends of the spectrum. We're going to talk about perfect competition, and we're going to talk about monopolies. All right. In this little chart, you'll notice you'll see on the left side, you have how many producers are there, and then at the top, you're going to see how our products differentiated. And differentiated is a fancy word for, are they different? Do consumers see them as different? And so what we have here with our 2 topics we're going to talk about today, monopolies and perfect competition, we see that people don't see the difference in the products. And where we really see the big difference is how many producers there are. In perfect competition, we're going to talk about how there are many, and with monopolies, there's only one. Oligopolies and monopolistic competition is going to be for another day. Okay, first we're going to start with perfect competition. And when we're talking about perfect competition, what we're really talking about is this idea that just like in sports and in a lot of things in life, it's a competition, and the markets are no different. And perfect competition isn't that different either. We have different stores, we have different companies who are competing against each other. But with perfect competition, something's pretty interesting is happening. With perfect competition, everyone who participates in perfect competition is referred to as a price taker. All right. We have price taking producers and we have price taking consumers. A price taking producer is someone that's told, hey, here's the market price for a product. Remember, market price, where supply and demand intersect, creates the market price. In perfect competition, everybody who produces and sells in perfect competition is a price taker. And that means that, hey, here is the market price. You are going to charge the market price and you're not going to mess with it. If you decide that you want to raise your price or lower your price, guess what? You're gone. Someone else is going to come in and take over your business, or you're not going to make as much money as other people and things like that. Same thing with the consumer. With a perfect competition, a consumer really has no place to haggle with prices. We're so low on the totem pole that it doesn't matter what we say to the person we're buying from. We are just a lowly member of the consumer pool, and they're not going to sell it for a price other than market price. So when we talk about price takers, we say, here's your price, you take it or you leave it. When we talk about a perfectly competitive market, that's just to summarize it. It's everyone is in competition. And the interesting thing why we call it perfect competition is that usually in competition, there's winners and there's losers. But with perfect competition, we all tie. We all basically come out with the same amount of money. And we'll talk about how that works out here in a little bit. Okay. So the first thing, how can it be perfect competition? If you notice around the outside, I've put 4 pictures of cereal. And at the end of the day, we've got Wheaties, Corn Flakes, Captain Crunch, and shredded wheat. A lot of people think cereal is cereal is cereal, that there's no difference. So realistically, cereal is a pretty good example of what we refer to as perfect competition. And there are 3 main characteristics that you're going to look at on this slide that are going to explain what perfect competition is. The first thing is that a producer's market share is the fraction of the total industry output represented by that producer's output. That's a lot to just say, we have no market share. When we say market share, what we're referring to is how powerful a company is. If you think about it as a pie, when, every company has a piece of a pie. And with perfect competition, we have a very small piece of the pie. If we were talking about the market for soft drinks, for pop, Coke and Pepsi have a really strong market share. Pepsi and Coke dictate what happens in the market. But when we're talking about cereals, if you think about going to your cereal aisle at your Kroger or your wherever you go, and God, it would be great to be able to go to a grocery store. But think about going to a grocery store. There are an aisle full and shelves just full of different types of cereal, meaning that there's not a huge market share. But when you go to the soda aisle, yeah, there's a lot of different types, and yeah, there's a lot of different shelves filled up, but a lot of times it's pretty much a Coke product or a Pepsi product, and maybe a third or fourth party, but really Coke and Pepsi have the market share. Where in perfect competition, you have nothing, you have no power. That's why you're a price taker. The other thing we have to think about is that the reason why we have no market power is that we are considered a standardized product. No one sees the difference. I'm going to come back to that one in a second. The last thing about perfect competition and its characteristics is that we have free entry and exit, that companies in perfect competition can come and go whenever they want. A good example of a perfect competition is a farmer's market. If you've ever been to a farmer's market, maybe the Carmel Farmer's Market or Fisher's, or I think Zionsville has one. The farmer's market is just a bunch of farmers or a bunch of vendors who set up and sell their fruits and vegetables. And fruits and vegetables aren't that different. They have no market share. And no one sees the difference in fruits and vegetables. So say one Saturday I'm selling Mayor's Marvelous Produce, and one Saturday the boys have a soccer tournament and we can't go to the Carmel's Farmers Market and I can't be there. So my business leaves the market. Nobody cares because I have such a little share of the market, and because I'm selling a product that is so similar to other people's products, no one's going to miss out. They're going to walk right by my empty stall and go buy their fruits and vegetables from someone else. And then the following Saturday, I could come back, and it's not like it's a huge change in anything. Take that example of the soft drink industry. If Coca-Cola tomorrow decides we're out of the pop making business, that's going to leave a huge dent in the market. But with perfect competition, no one cares. We go back to the idea of standardized product, and we look at these different boxes of cereal. You guys may all argue that there's differences in that, but for a lot of consumers with perfect competition, we don't see the difference. I like to use the story that I always tell in my class of this guy here. This is my grandpa, Chuck Mayer. He passed away about 7 or 8, maybe even longer years ago. And that's him holding Michael, my 10-year-old now. Grandpa Chuck was a hard-nosed guy. He grew up during the Great Depression. He fought in World War II. I have a lot of good stories about Grandpa. So the next time we have a live meeting, I have some really good stories about guardian angels. So if you're actually still watching this video, remind me to tell you those stories. But when we were growing up, Grandpa, uh, my grandma died, and my grandpa got remarried, and he married this wonderful woman. And the two of them, they got this lake house on this island in Lake Erie. The island's called Put-in Bay, and on Put-in Bay there is this monument. It's called Perry's Monument. It's a monument to Oliver Hazard Perry, who was an admiral during the War of 1812, and he helped the Americans um, beat the British in the War of 1812. He saved the Great Lakes. He saved Lake Erie. So people in Ohio love this guy. And they loved him so much that they put this cylinder-shaped monument of him on Put-in Bay. And we used to go there all the time when we were kids. And you could climb up to the top of Perry's Monument up here, and you can look back on downtown Cleveland. And on good days, you could look out and you can kind of see Canada, because it's right there and all that fun stuff. We used to do this all the time with my grandparents and my family. Then look at this family. This is from our latest trip to New York, not too long before we actually all got shut down. And we're standing at the Statue of Liberty. And when I was a kid growing up, we didn't have that much money, and we, didn't go on tons of vacations or spring breaks or things like that. So when I was a kid, when I was 12 years old, my uncle was marrying a girl from New Jersey. So we all loaded up the car, and we went to New Jersey, and then my dad and his brothers and all their families, we all went, and we all went a week early so we could do sightseeing in New York. And one of the days we went to Liberty Island, and we were going to go on the Statue of Liberty. And this was when you can go all the way up here, but we had tickets all the way to go up to the Crown. And we're sitting there, and we're waiting for our turn, and it's starting to drizzle, and my grandpa's there and my dad's there, and it's our ticket time is up. So we go to rally the troops, and my dad goes up to my grandpa, who's sitting on a bench on the island, and he goes, "All right, Dad, let's go. It's time to go up. It's time to go up in the monument into Lady Liberty." And my grandpa, a hard-nosed old guy, said, "I'm not going to go, and I'm not doing it." And at this time, it's not the best day. It's drizzling a little bit, and Grandpa is very stuck in not going to the Statue of Liberty. And my dad said, "Come on, Dad, we've been here. We came all the way over here. Let's go." And my grandpa says, "No, I'm not going to do it." And my dad says, "Come on, you got to do it. It's the Statue of Liberty." The only other time my grandpa had been in New York City up until this point, which was 1992, was when he returned home from World War II. When he got off his boat at the end of World War II in about 1945. So this is a big thing. And my grandpa says, "I'm not going to the top of the Statue of Liberty. I've been to the top of Perry's Monument. Why do I need to go to the top of the Statue of Liberty?" So my dad was flabbergasted by this, and he said, "Dad, how could you even say the two things are the same?" And my grandpa said, "A tree is a tree is a tree." So to my grandpa, this cylinder that's located in Ohio is the same thing as the symbol of freedom that all the immigrants that came over in the late 1800s, early 1900s saw as a sign of freedom. He thinks that these two things are the exact same thing. A tree is a tree is a tree. And that is a long story to explain standardized products. No one sees the difference. So why would I pay more money for a product when it's all the same? Think fruits, think vegetables, think wheat, all that fun stuff. All right, my suggestion to you is you pause the video right now and you take a little bit of a break, and then maybe 5 minutes, come back, watch the second half of the video. So hopefully you've paused. All right. So now we're going to go on from Grandpa, and we're going to talk about monopolies. And yes, if we were in class, someone would ask, "Are we going to play Monopoly?" And my answer was probably not. But I wanted to I put this PowerPoint together, and I've changed it over the years, but the background I was really proud of. So I loved using my Monopoly board backgrounds. We've already talked about so we talked about how we were going to talk about Perfect Competition that has many producers. And that's something I needed to mention. Perfect Competition, there are many, 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 many producers. Perfect Competition probably has the most product of producers out there. On the flip side, we've got other markets that have a lot smaller. We're going to talk later on about oligopolies, where there's only a few people that produce, could be the same product, could be different. Monopolies is what we're really going to focus on here, where there's only one producer and they sell one good that's the same. And that is very much different from perfect competition, where we have many producers compared to just one. The last one's monopolistic competition, which is a little bit of combination of a couple different things. We'll talk more about that later. With a monopoly, first things first, a monopolist is a firm that it only has one producer and there's no close substitute. We talked about, like with perfect competition, if my fruit stand isn't there, you can go buy fruit at another stand. It's not that hard to find different places to buy fruits to find a substitute. When we're talking about one firm, we call that firm a monopolist, and they are in a monopoly. All right. Monopolies don't happen all the time. I'm going to bust everyone's bubble. A lot of people will be like, oh, Walmart is a monopoly. Amazon is a monopoly. No, they aren't. Monopolies are characterized by one company producing a product that has no close substitutes. If you don't, you might not care for the way Walmart runs their business. So don't go to Walmart, go to Target, go to Meijer, go to, Kroger Signatures. Target, Walmart, Meijer, those places are considered oligopolies. You think Amazon is trying to ruin the world by making everything be, one-click shopping on Amazon, getting a Prime membership. You may think that they're trying to control your life. You're not wrong, but they're not a monopoly. You can go to any website, any company and buy other stuff online. So those monopolies usually don't happen. All right, here's the big thing about monopolies. Here's what we were talking about before with perfect competition. You've got your demand curve, you got your supply curve, you've got the point here where the equilibrium, where market price is. In a perfect competition, we have to charge that market price. We're price takers. We don't have an option. With a monopoly, I do what I want. I jacked up the price. All right. And yes, the quantity demanded goes down, but guess what? I'm the only one that sells a product that you probably need. Okay. So that's how a monopoly makes money. We're the only one that sells it. And if you don't want to buy it from us, too bad. You need it. You'll pay what we get. All right. So how do we become a monopoly? All right. With perfect competition, pretty much anyone could be in part of the perfect competition. Okay. But with a monopoly, there's what's called barriers to entry. It's things that are preventing other companies from joining this market. All right. With monopolies, there are 4 types of barriers to entry. These 4 principles that I talk about. Okay. And I'll be happy to talk more about these if people really want me to, and I can explain them more. But I'll do a quick job of talking about them right now. The first one says control of a scarce resource or input. All right. Imagine a company such as Chiquita Bananas, Dole Fruit. These are oil companies. These are people, or diamond companies. These are groups that have control of something that's not found all over the place. Diamonds are in mines that were found in Africa. De Beers is a company that was a monopoly for over 100 years because they controlled 90% of the diamond mines in Africa. Oil companies, there's not a ton of oil spots that are functioning. So oil for a long time was a monopoly. The Chiquita Bananas, Dole, you need certain climates to be able to grow those types of fruit year round, and they had control of that scarce resource. Remember, scarce, we talked about, means not a lot. So if you have control of a scarce resource, then you can become a monopoly. It doesn't happen all the time, but it can. So that's the first one. The second one's called economies of scale. And this is something that's a little interesting. And it doesn't happen all the time. And we try to shut these down. We talked about, when we were doing our cost analysis, we talked about how usually our average total costs always go up. We talked about how if we made more product, it was going to cost us more to make that product. And I said 99.9% of the time, our total cost and our average total cost will always go up. But there is one time or one instance where our average total cost goes down, and that's referred to as an economy of scale, and it's also referred to as a natural monopoly. Examples of natural monopoly would be the railroads or the phone companies or satellite companies. What happens is these companies, like we'll take satellite cable as our example. When DirecTV wanted to start what they were doing, they had to spend a ton of money upfront. We call it overhead costs. They spend a ton of money upfront to fire satellites into space and to build a big dish in Texas, where most of the discs are, and the big satellite dishes, and they spent a ton of money for that. But now that satellite's in outer space, that big dish is in Texas. Now, anytime someone wants to join DirecTV, someone comes to your house, they hand you, they put a little frisbee-like disc in your backyard. They point it southwest. They run a $5 cable from that disc or dish to your living room where you have the DirecTV box, and that box probably costs $30, but they charge you $90 a month. So you are paying way more than any of the costs that are left. They've paid off the cost of that satellite. They've paid off the cost of that big dish. You have paid for the cost of that box that probably cost $25 to make, and you paid $90 every month. You're covering the cost. So these companies are making money hand over fist. And they might not have necessarily tried to become a monopoly, but they did because they have found a way to cut costs and make money. Okay. I can explain that one more for anyone who wants me to. The third one is technological superiority, and this usually happens in the short run. If you think about when iPhone first came out, Apple had the technology, Apple had the way to say to consumers, you want a cell phone, but you also want the internet. You also want a place to have your email and listen to your music and take your pictures and do all these different things. Apple was the only one who did this when they came out with iPhone 1, 10, 11 years ago? So they had control of this market, and Apple was a monopoly for about 6 months before other companies started making similar versions. But if you wanted a smart screen touch phone, you needed to get the Apple iPhone. But other people figured it out. And then the last one is a lot of times the government, while they're trying to protect our intellectual property and our rights, what you need to realize is that sometimes they help create monopolies. So if I have an idea for a product, I could put a patent on something, and then I could be the only one that controls it. If I could also have copyright to a song or a movie script or different things like that, think about what's going on with COVID-19. As these companies are trying to develop a drug, they could patent the formula to that drug, and if they're the only ones that have something that works, they could stand to become a monopoly. What we'll see, though, is that the government is going to try to stop monopolies. Monopolies are not good. Monopolies are bad. We need to prevent them. I'm skipping that slide. You can look at that slide before on your own time. The last thing I wanted to talk about is how do we stop monopolies? So in that example of, well, what if a company comes up with the vaccine for COVID-19, and could they become a monopoly? They could, but what's going to happen is the government is going to come in and they're going to regulate prices. There's no way they're going to allow, when we have a pandemic going on, for a company to make a ton of money off of this. So what they'll do is they'll regulate prices. Same thing happens with satellite companies. Same thing happens with railroads. Companies that you think are monopolies, but they have to regulate. Okay? So monopolies are created from those barriers to entry. Monopolies are bad, and we're going to try to stop them. And the biggest way we stop them, government can come in and take over ownership of the company, but the biggest way we stop monopolies is through price regulation, where we tell the different companies. You can't charge more than this. You have to tell us the prices and things like that. Okay, I've talked for a long time and I want to stop. There are a couple other slides that you can look at. Maybe this is something price discrimination is something that we'll probably take a look at the next time we meet, or I could even just talk about it for a couple minutes at another time. So hopefully what I would do is maybe go back and look at the PowerPoint, make sure you're filling out any definitions, especially we've talked about perfect competition and monopolies today. So make sure you go in and fill out those things. I'll be around. I have posted my office hours. So if you have any questions about anything, please let me know. And I hope you have a good rest of the day.